you would, we'll stand and say the pledge and then remain standing, and we'll have the invocation done by Father Nicodemus from St. Rose of Lima. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord Jesus Christ, we thank you so much for the gift of life, the gift of one another. We thank you especially for the gift of those in authority whom you have given us to rule and to guide us to right directions. You invited us in St. Paul's letter to St. Timothy, first letter, from chapter 1, beginning from verse 2 to 1. You remind us once again that we offer petitions and thanksgiving to those in authority so that they will carry out their responsibility with wisdom. Lord, we thank you so much for these men and women you have chosen for us in our city. We commit them into your hands, and we pray that the Lord, you build them and fill them with your wisdom and knowledge, that, Lord, they will continue to do the good work they have been doing for our city. And we also pray that they be always in communion, always in unity, so as to foster the goodness of our people. We pray also for all our people in our city, that they, as we are all subjects, give us the grace to listen to them, to follow their direction, because leaders are chosen from God, like St. Paul tells us in his letter to the Romans. So, Lord, we beg you, give us that grace to always listen, so that our city will be so beautiful, both in words and in actions. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Now, the Father, Son of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Father. Okay, do we have any comments on agenda items? No. Any comments on non-agenda items? I believe I have one.
Mayor
Paul-
Ortega, yes, it's Mr. Paul David.
Yes. And welcome to our meeting, Supervisor Paul David.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. I enjoy each of the meetings. I learn so much. Appreciate your service. There's been a couple of council and board meetings, a couple of preliminary meetings recently, even in a discussion in the paper about the feelings of the different entities, the different communities are not participating equally. And I have, an analogy comes to mind of, I used to, my sisters used to put me on the front of a bicycle built for two, and I would pedal, but I was pretty sure sometimes they weren't pedaling from behind, they were just riding. And so I understand the frustration, and but we have so many positive things in the city of Safford as a citizen, so many things that I am grateful for. Your support of the Safe House, Boys and Girls Club, the tremendous pool, the Samaritan House, all the good things that are being done. And I am not easily discouraged, and I am committed to working with with your council and with the county to, as a citizen and as a constituent of both, to work out solutions and something that's satisfactory. I brought visual aid. There's a difference between a wedge and a shim. This is a wood shim. Some shims are metal shims. They're very small, but shims are used for making minute corrections in high efficiency, high power machines to eliminate vibrations or to true things up. They make things straight. They make things work well. Wedges are used to destroy. They will split a tree. They can split rocks. They divide and destroy. And so I am committed to if we need some fine adjustments, if we need to improve efficiency, need to make things better, I'm committed to utilizing shims and cooperating and making things better and not allow wedges to be, if I can help it, to be driven between the communities and the county and each other. We have so many positive, good things, and we have such a great future. And this is not a time to pick sides and circle the wagons. This is the time for us to work even harder. I appreciate your leadership and the tremendous things that are happening. Your budget, your revenue, things look really good, and we want to participate and make things better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, then we'll move on to item number 7. We'll close the regular meeting and we're going to reconvene into executive session. We'll need a motion.
Make a motion, we come out of regular meeting and enter into executive session.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. We'll be in executive session for a while.
my agenda. Yeah. Thank you.
Then we'll go ahead and move on to item number 9. We'll close the executive session and reconvene into our regular meeting. We'll, we'll close our regular meeting and reconvene into our work session. The work session, it'll be on the budget.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight we'll have a work session on revenue and fund balance. In previous years, or at least in the previous years that I've been doing the budget, we had this a little bit later. This year we preferred to have it before because it's important to know how much revenue the city is generating or how much fund balance we have to support the expenditures before we present the expenditure budgets. So this is to seek input from City Council regarding revenue and fund balance projections. Arizona revised statutes requires the city to prepare and adopt a balanced budget annually before the third Monday in July. We've been developing the budget since late August of last year. The City Council has reviewed the staff's 5-year capital improvement proposal over the past couple months. The City Council will also review the department expenditure budgets over the following months. Another important aspect of budget adoption is to estimate available funding for each fund. Available funding can take the form of what is already earned and not spent by the city, for example, fund balance, and annual revenues anticipated through the fiscal year. Staff has leveraged multiple sources in estimating revenues for this year's budget, including the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the state's Joint Legislative Budget Committee, the University of Arizona's Eller College of Business, the League of Arizona Cities and Towns, the Arizona Department of Revenue, and the City of Safford's building permit, licensing, customer account data, and audited financial statements. The estimates of available funding include earmarks and fund balance reserve requirements defined in the City Council adopted FY 25-26. In the adopted financial policies. For our analysis, the fund balances for the city's major funds are strong. The general fund started FY 25 with a total fund balance of $18.1 million unaudited. Staff anticipates spending $2.8 million of the general fund balance by fiscal year end. Revenues have been coming in stronger than expected. As you see in the council communication, there's a table that lays out the beginning balance for the general fund, HERF and Streets Fund, and the enterprise funds. This is a reference for all of you. I will go into further detail in the presentation. Table 2 identifies the major revenue categories for the general fund, comparing the current budget to expected actuals and the next year's budget estimate. I do want to remind that with uncertainties in the legislation from this year's session, we will be budgeting, or we will not be using the 26 estimate, but rather we'll be using prior year revenue estimate for sales tax. So as you see in Table 2, there are 3 columns, the first being the 25 budget, the second being the 25 projection, and the third being an estimate if sales tax or the food tax remains in place. With our revenue estimate, we are going with the FY 25 budget for city sales tax. Does that make sense to council?
That's what you're calling flat.
Flat. Flat on sales tax, yes. I also want to remind council that the city is experiencing an increased state shared income tax revenue, or we experienced an increased state income tax revenue in the prior 2 years. This was because the league helped negotiate an increase in the percentage shared with local jurisdictions during those 2 years to hold harmless while the state implemented a flat income tax rate. This is the first year that we see that flat income tax rate implemented. And with that, I will begin my presentation now. Yeah, it's working. It seems like it's coming through the audio on this. No? And the volume's all the way down on my iPad. You just want to mute the Air Media? Let me know when you have it muted. That's pretty. It's all the Air Media. You guys all have the packet? That's the problem is when you go to Air Media, that's when the interference is coming in. You can try too. I don't know. Bear with this as we resolve technical difficulties. It's not as exciting without a presentation because then you just listen to me talk, and I would not want to listen to myself talk. You try. Okay, good. If you have questions, you can ask me and I can try to clarify. Sorry about this. So we're going to be discussing revenue projections and fund balance. We're going to be in the general fund. Specifically, we're going to be forecasting based on historical trends, economic conditions, and anticipated growth. Remind you again, with the sales tax, we will be holding that flat. Our primary revenue sources in the general fund are sales tax, state shared revenues, fees, and property tax. There are expected changes due to inflation, legislative impacts, or economic development impacts. The fund balance across all funds, the general fund maintains financial stability for all core services. The enterprise funds is funded mainly through user fees, and this is ensuring self-sufficiency and infrastructure reinvestment. Ensuring fund balance meets policy requirements for long-term fiscal health is an important part of the city to maintain healthy fund balances. Strategic use of reserves for capital improvements and emergency preparedness, and then continued monitoring and adjustments based on economic conditions. The terminology that we'll be using tonight, I just want to add some clarification based on what we are trying to use. For fund balance, it represents the overall financial position of a city at the end of a fiscal year, including unspent revenues. Reserves is the portion of the fund balance set aside for specific future needs, such as emergencies or capital projects. And then contingency funds are allocation within the annual budget to cover unexpected short-term expenses or emergencies. The key differences are that fund balance is a broad measure of financial health, and reserves are designated savings. Contingency funds are budgeted within a fiscal year for unseen needs. Reserves serve as long-term financial cushions. On slide 4, you'll see a graph that shows 3 different color bars. The first color bar, which is yellow, is the FY 2025 budget. So that's what we budgeted for revenues in the general fund. You can see there's local taxes or state shared, or not state shared, but sales tax. Then you have state shared income tax, state shared sales tax, franchise fees, state shared VLT, and property tax. This is not all of the revenue sources that the general fund collects, but these are the major categories. In the next slide, you're going to see most of the general fund revenue sources. The next line is, or the next bar in the graph is the projected revenue for the current fiscal year. And then the green bar would be the projected line if we continue to trend the pattern on how the revenues are coming in. But as I said earlier, we are budgeting at the FY25 budget for sales tax only. The other revenue sources, we will be budgeting at what we forecast them at. Moving on to slide number 5. The total anticipated general fund revenues is $19,213,792, with holding the sales tax flat. So as you can see, holding the sales tax flat puts it at $10.3 million. State shared income tax is at $2.3. All others, which includes the golf course revenue, is at $1.9 million. State shared sales tax is at $1.7. Franchise fees is at $1.1. Vehicle license tax is at almost $750,000. Fire district payment, which is half of what the fire department's budget is $696,000. And then the property tax would be $313,000. I'm gonna try again, bear with me. Okay. Thank you, IT department. Any questions on this slide, the previous slide, or the other slides that we've already gone over?
Where does the franchise monies come from?
So the franchise fees, those are what the utilities department pay us, because there's not a tax that they pay because they're a government entity. So they pay that through us, or it's a revenue that they distribute to us.
Our own enterprises, this is what they're paying.
Yes.
And say like people that are on our polls, people that come from anywhere else.
The franchise fee that you're speaking of is a separate fee from that category. The poll franchise fee it comes in under all other revenue. This is a franchise fee that is specifically for utilities that are run by government entities. They don't have to pay a specific tax because they're a government entity, and we're tax exempt in that category, and so then they pay that tax to us as the government entity, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is the 5%. Yes.
That we charge ourselves, that we charge our enterprises. And they also pay interdepartmental fees too?
So on top of the 5% franchise fee, you are correct. There is a cost allocation to the general fund to help them run services that they cannot run themselves. So if you imagine an enterprise fund as its own business, like a electric utility. They would need payroll services, they would need management services, they would need all the services that the general fund already provides them. So that cost allocation is so that they don't have to provide them themselves if they were their own utility.
I just didn't know clearly where we got this money. Thank you.
Any other questions on the general fund revenue?
Does the income from the Amazon, the taxes we get from that, does that fall under the all other, or where is that falling?
Can you repeat that again? I didn't hear the beginning part of that.
The Amazon purchases?
So the
Where is that?
marketplace facilitated purchases, that
Mhm.
would come in under local sales taxes.
Okay.
And that's a separate category than your typical retail. This was back due to legislation or a lawsuit that passed it. They call it the Wayfair tax. But that would be under local taxes. And that's more than Amazon. It's all online sales that are purchased in the city of Safford. It doesn't have to do with the location of where it's being purchased online. It has to do with where it's being delivered to. Any other questions? So we're going to continue on into fund balance now. I'll walk you through this first one, and it's going to be similar for all the remaining funds after this. So this is, when we follow this down, this is the beginning of the current fiscal year we're in. And what it's going to lead us to is what our fund balance is going to be at the beginning of fiscal year 26. So this is how much you're going to have in fund balance going into the next budget. And so beginning in this current fiscal year that we're in, which is an unaudited number, this would be the 24 ending or the 25 beginning fund balance. We have an unaudited number of $18 million in fund balance. Now, according to council direction and decision that was made, we would like to keep a budget stabilization reserve of 50% of past year actual expenditures plus our full debt service for the current year. And so that number, this in 2020 or in FY25 is $7.476 million. Now the other requirements or non-spendables include a $500,000 savings or set aside for the PSPRS bond that we're required to have. So that is a requirement. We also have a set aside for the money that we've saved up. We talked about this in a previous council meeting. Any of the property tax that is not used for the police station debt service goes into a set aside for a future fire station. Also, there is the set aside for the Economic Development Fund, what's remaining in that fund. And then any prepaid insurances that we have go into that as well. So that's what makes up that 1.5 million. So with those coming out of the 18 million at the beginning of this current fiscal year, that leaves us, or that left us 9 million to spend in this fiscal year above our required fund balance. Ongoing revenues, this is a projected number for the current fiscal year, is at 19.5 million. The operating expenditures, so this is our budgeted, this is if we spent everything that we budgeted for the current fiscal year in the general fund, is 14.8 million. We have transfers in and transfers out. Part of that transfer out is a transfer out to streets and HERF in the form of the 0.5% of sales tax that we collect. And then also the vehicle license tax was council direction to go to streets as well. And then the transfers in is what we talked about with the general fund cost allocation services. The net between those two is less 783,000. So when you total those all up, that puts us at a net income for the current fiscal year of 4 million, around 4 million. The proposed CIP for this year is 6.7 million. So that's the current fiscal year, 6.7 million. So that would give us a change to fund balance of 2.8 million. And that would put us at 6.759 going into fiscal year 26 or ending fiscal year 25. Any questions on that?
And that's still keeping it flat.
So that does not, So that's the current fiscal year. So that's already what's
Current.
taken place. That's already what's been projected and what's budgeted. That doesn't have to do with anything in the current legislation. That's just what we're going to be at going into the next budget. So that's what we want to talk about going forward is that's 6.7 above the required also. That's above the required. That's not total, that's above the required. So as you can see, the required in fiscal year 25 was 7,476, 7,476,000. Next year it will be more because our actual expenditures, they tend to increase with inflation and with our merits and COLAs. It will be a little bit more. So, but that, based on our estimate, that 6.759 million will be what we have above what next year's fund balance requirement will be.
You've got a sizable hit on the proposed CIP because you've got the park in there. So usually you won't have a capital expenditure in CIP of that magnitude.
One of the important things that I want to draw your attention to is that as we look at ongoing revenues versus our operating expenditures and then the transfers in and out, we net $3.9 million without doing without doing CIP. We still net 3.9. Now we do CIP and we use that net to cover CIP in the general fund, but I just wanted to draw that attention.
I just want to clarify, Matthew. So at the end of fiscal year 25, so at the end of July or June, we will have available an additional 6.7 million. So kind of looking at these, we're more close to like almost 100% of fund balance in the general fund.
We, based on that, yes, we would be 100% of what our operating expenditures are funded in our fund balance.
And what is the, according to either GFOA or what is the recommended fund balance?
I don't know off the top of my head what the recommended is from GFOAZ. 25%, 30% as the highest.
So they recommend 3 months of operating. So if you look at 3 months of our operating, it's a much smaller number than what we're putting aside. So yeah, that'd be about 25%, if not less. Probably 18% would probably be your 3 months of operating. So
Yeah, you're the one that bumped it to 50.
You want
Thank you.
60. You want 60.
Again, this is just to point out that the city has made, and council have made decisions in the past that have put us in a very healthy position financially to be able to do the things that we want to do to make the city look and how we want it to look and provide the services that we want to for our citizens. So kudos to the councils in the past and to this council for making those decisions.
But I did want to point one thing out, and it's something that I've discussed with the finance director as well, and it's something I've discussed with council, and that is that we're still in the process of trying to work out our life cycle maintenance. Now, obviously, it's not going to absorb $6 million, although there'll be capital projects that probably absorb a good part of that. So one of the things that we're working on and one of the things that we've discussed previously is really understanding the true cost of doing business. So if we look at things like the pool or even some of the parking lots and some of the buildings, we're not doing a regularized, standardized life cycle maintenance, which could be fairly substantial. Again, I'm not saying it's going to absorb all your fund balance, but I still think that there are costs that we have not standardized that we need to look at, and we are working on that right now, and we're in those discussions. So again, keeping our infrastructure healthy and in full repair. I know, I'm sure council has been in City Hall. I think there's carpeting in there that's older than I am. So I think there's things that we need to be doing and doing it on a cycle. That cycle, just like your vehicle and equipment rotation would show you, is something that we need to look at and make sure that we're keeping things in good shape. So that's something we're currently working on. And again, it's something I talk to council about. I call it life cycle maintenance, but it's that fairly substantial cost that lies between regular ongoing costs and then capital projects.
Any questions on how this is put together? This was going to be the similar for the next couple, or for all of the, how I described the fund balance and all the funds going forward. So if you have any questions on where these numbers come from or how the ordering of them is, just let me know.
Did you put the 8 million for the park in the operating expenditure, or where is that showing?
The 8 million is, so the 8 million for the park is spread over multiple years. We had an original, it was, and a portion of that was grant funded. So this is just general fund alone monies. So 5 million in the current fiscal year was general fund money. Is council direction to put 5 million towards that. So that's actually in the proposed CIP number. And then 1.7 million of that, I believe is from other CIP projects. Airport has a couple. Facility maintenance had a couple. Parks has other projects as well. Golf course, if they had any projects. So any of those general fund CIP projects would be in that 6.7 million. Now the thing is, that is if all the projects got completed in the current fiscal year. Obviously, we know that projects take sometimes longer than 1 year, so there will be carryover, and that number will eventually probably be smaller than that 6.7. But that's if all the projects got completed, just like if we spent all of our expenditures. So the thing to think about this as well is we typically we budget at full exposure for our expenditures. We typically never reach that full exposure, so we're always have a conservative budget in that case, and so that number is if we were to spend the most, and it's the same with the CIP. Other cases, though, sometimes we do spend all of the CIP, and sometimes we have to come to council to spend more on certain projects. So this is at a point in time with projections. I would like to come back after at a year end. We've talked about having quarterly or year end updates for council and show kind of where this all fell through at the end of the year. And so we can kind of see kind of where that sits now. And as we go through, as we get our audited financials back, there'll be a more solid number at the top of there right now. Again, that's going off of unaudited financials right now. So typically we like to use audited financials.
Fell through, that's not a negative choice. of
No,
words.
sir. No, sir. Not negative.
Okay.
I caught myself saying that too, and thank you for clarifying. That's not negative. So next fund that we're going to talk about is our special revenue fund, or the highway user revenue fund, or the streets fund, as we like to call it. Their unaudited beginning fund balance for this current fiscal year was 5.7 million. Their required budget stabilization reserve is 1.38 million. And then their other required or non-spendables is 855,000. Their available to spend going into fiscal year 25 is 3.49, almost 3.5 million. They get ongoing revenues of 3.37, and that ongoing revenue does include the transfer in from the general fund of the sales tax, as well as the VLT. Their operating expenditures budget is about $1.86 million. And then they have transfers in and out of 120,000. That would leave them at a net income of around $2 million. Their proposed CIP is 200,000, which means that they will be adding $1.7 million to their fund balance, putting them at 6.179 million above their required fund balance. One of the things I do want to point out in streets is typically we see in the streets fund, they save money over 4 years, and then they have a big project, and that drains them all the way down to what the required is. You'll see our public works director does a really good job at scheduling his CIP to be every 4 years. He has that big project that basically pulls that fund balance down because streets projects are expensive. Does anybody have any questions on her streets? If not, we'll continue to the sanitation fund. Their beginning fund balance, and one of the things I do want to point out with the sanitation fund is that they became an enterprise fund in 2019. So they just recently became an enterprise fund. So their fund balance is going to be a little bit on the lower side, but with that, there are some things that I do want to point out with their fund balance as well. So their beginning fund balance unaudited again is 1.1 million. Their required fund balance is 393,000 for last year actuals. And then their other requirements or non-spendables is 20,000. So that leaves them an available to spend of 716,000. They have an ongoing revenue projection of 1.3 million. Their operating expenditures for the current fiscal year that we've budgeted are 989,000. They have a transfer in and out of 92,000, and that leaves them with a net income of 200,000. They do not have a CIP project this year, so their change to fund balance will be 300,000, which puts them at about 936,000 above the required fund balance. One of the things I do want to point out with the sanitation fund, and we've talked about this a couple times now, is that with the finance department, the fleet supervisor, looking at our vehicle replacement and rotation program, we noticed that the fund like sanitation and landfill have not been putting enough money aside for replacement of their large equipment. And so that operating expenditures budget is going to increase, or we'll bring a proposed increase to that in the upcoming budget. And then that will also increase what their required fund balance is going to be with that change as well. So I don't want to throw any numbers out there yet because I would like council to see them in the Senate, and I don't have them off the top of my head. But just think when you look at the budget for this year, half of that is going to be what they're required to save in the future year. And their operating budget is also going to increase. So that fund balance number is possibly going to become smaller. Luckily, we are doing a rate study right now, so that might, and we've relayed all this information to our consultants who will take into account all of the things that we are talking about right now.
Is that gonna be now and forever, or just certain time to get healed up?
Is that, can you specify what that is?
Because you said we weren't putting enough into our vehicles. How long will that take us to catch up?
So the plan that we've put together in talking with the fleet supervisor and then the finance director and the city manager and the assistant city manager and I is going to stabilize the vehicle replacement fund for the rest, for hopefully forever, as long as we keep the vehicle replacement fund in place. Sanitation is unique in the fact that their vehicles get heavy use, their equipment rather get heavy use, and they need to be replaced almost every year. You need to replace one of the sanitation trucks every year. And so in order to do that, you need to be setting aside the cost of one sanitation truck almost every year because their useful life is 7 years. And we have 7 that we run every day. So as one falls off, we have to replace it with a new one. We have reserve vehicles that will rotate in as well, but we look at replacing one a year. And with this new plan that we have in place, it will keep it up so that we won't have to fall into having 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old sanitation trucks all at once. So you'll have a more modern, newer fleet. And so hopefully we get to a point where you only have one that you have to replace every year instead of hitting a point where there's 3 or 4 that are at their useful life.
So we can kind of be healed in 1 year.
We are at a point where we can be stable in sanitation in 1 year.
Okay.
Plus, the idea is to have a plan, right? So when we look at the rate studies, if you say healed in 1 year, if we put in place a plan that takes into account the number of vehicles and how they should rotate, yes, you'll be healed in 1 year. Will you
His
realize?
choice of wording, mine's colloquialism.
Yeah.
His choice of words probably a little better.
All right.
On next is the landfill. Similar case with the vehicle replacement, but not as unique as sanitation, and we'll talk about that. So their beginning fund balance is negative. One of the things I do want to point out with the landfill is that we have a negative fund balance because we have post-closure that we have to account for, and what that is we have to set aside money knowing that we have to maintain the landfill past closure. So when we close the landfill, we have to have money set aside to maintain and keep that up. And so what we have done is created a negative fund balance, negative. There's not negative money. It's a kind of an artifact saying that we're negative so that when we get to a point where we do have the proper amount of fund balance, it will be a positive number for post-closure. So with that being said, we do have negative $319,000 with post-closure. A budget stabilization reserve, they're required around $800,000 in the landfill. And then they have other requirements are non-spendable of $883,000. And as we get into these later enterprise funds, that non-spendable or other requirements is going to be the cost of the infrastructure now. So we talk about infrastructure in your landfill, your water, your gas, your electric. They have infrastructure in place. And so that's the cost of the asset that we own in infrastructure. So they're available to spend is negative $2 million. Their ongoing revenues, they bring in 2.25, and then their operating expenditures for this current fiscal year 1.9. They have a transfer in and or out rather of 175,000. That puts them at 153,000 net. And then they don't have a proposed CIP for the current year, so they would be putting $153,000 to their fund balance, bringing the available to spend to 1.2. Again, that's above the required. So if you look at what their stabilization is at 800,000, they are chipping away at that negative number, getting it closer to zero. So the landfill is doing well, rather even though there is a negative fund balance in there, they're doing well. They're getting closer to zero. The closure date on the landfill is 2043, I believe. And at that point, you need to have enough saved in your fund balance. We're at year 2025, and so we're doing well in the landfill.
Didn't we talk at one time about purchasing property east of there?
We have talked, and BLM, we're still in talks with BLM. That is moving forward. With that, with a new purchase of land, that will push out our closure date, so we will be able to run the landfill longer. So again, as we have that purchase and as the landfill expands, that post-closure date gets further and further out. So that is a good point.
Are we expanding or are we going vertical still?
I will defer to Public Works Director.
So I kind of restate, I'll fix what he just said. So our closure date will still be the 2043, 44 for our current landfill. We'll open up basically a new landfill on the property to the east. We'll get that designed and opened up where we can start making a pit there and get a lining in. And then once that's opened up, our closure date will still be, post-closure fees and costs will still be associated with that 2044 date or 2043 date. We'll close that, maintain that one, and have a new one started on the east side. That is in BLM's hands. It's under environmental assessment right now. We just had a meeting in the last few weeks, and it's going to be a process. It's probably a year out from getting that all finalized. And then once we can acquire that property, we can go to start designing our new landfill.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Lance. Any other questions on landfill? Next up is water. Their beginning fund balance. So as I talked about earlier with the landfill, infrastructure is now included in these top three numbers. And so when you see a beginning fund balance or an unaudited fund balance, that is how much they have in their fund balance and then also the value of the assets. We've talked about the finance director has brought a contract for Baker Tilly to go out and do capital asset inventory. Water department was the first one that we tried to tackle. We were able to go out and tag what we had in water assets. So that number is accurate now to what we have in asset value. So based on what we have in the system and based on what that number is, that is what we have, including what we have in fund balance. So when we go down to other requirements or non-spendable, that is taking out that asset value. Does that make sense? Okay. So with that, their required fund balance is $3.5 million. So that leaves them at $4.8 million available to spend for the current fiscal year. They have an ongoing revenue projection this year of 6.2. Their operating expenditures are 5.2, and then their transfers out is 661,000. That leaves them with a net of 294,000. Their proposed CIP for the current year is 200,000, and that leaves them with a change to fund balance of 94,000. And that puts them at 4.8 million going into next year above their required fund balance. Any questions on water? Wastewater. So they have a beginning fund balance of 26 million. Their required fund balance is 1.2. Their other requirements or non-spendables is 17 million. That puts them at a 7.8 above required fund balance. Their ongoing revenues are 2.8. Their operating expenditures are 1.9. Their transfers out are 16. That gives them a net income of 727,000. Their proposed CIP for the current year is 1 million, and that puts them at a change to fund balance of 292 and leaves them with 7.54 going into the next fiscal year. So this is just the wastewater. This is not the wastewater treatment plant. Moving on to the wastewater treatment, or rather, sorry, I want to retract that last statement. This does include the wastewater treatment plant. Sorry about that.
So does the other requirements or non-spendable, is that,
That includes the infrastructure at the wastewater treatment plant as
that's
well.
an estimated of what their assets are?
I believe does that include, were we able to tag all the assets for wastewater? So we did wastewater as well.
Okay.
And it's the depreciated value. So, and it does include the wastewater treatment plant, sorry. Next up is natural gas. Their beginning fund balance is 4.8. Their required fund balance is 1.3. Their other requirements or non-spendables is around 3 million. That leaves them at 500,000 above the required fund balance. Their projected revenue is 2.9. Their budgeted expenditures is 2.5. Their transfers out is 350,000. That puts them at a net loss of 3,295. And they have a CIP of 75,000 this year, so that would put them at a $78,000 change, negative $78,000 change to fund balance, putting them at $554,000 above their required for the next year. Any questions on natural gas? And I believe this is the last one, electric. Their beginning fund balance is 23 million. Their required fund balance is 5.8. Their other requirements are non-spendable is 13 million. That leaves them at 4.8 above the required fund balance. Their ongoing revenues is 14.4. Their budgeted expenditures is 11.3. They transfer out $600,000. That puts them at 2.5 above, or net 2.5 rather. Their proposed CIP for the current year is 1.5, giving them a $968,000 change to fund balance, putting them at 6 million above their required fund balance going into next fiscal year.
Just checking these numbers. I haven't heard any more about attempting to do Sunrise Village because that'd have put a nick in it. We're good there.
Any projects going forward that council has decided or directed that would go into the CIP would show up in that proposed CIP number, ultimately changing the fund balance. Any questions on any of the fund balances or clarification?
I'd have to ask you tomorrow.
I believe this is the second year that I've presented this presentation. Is council like the way that this is formatted? Is there anything else that they would like to see in terms of fund balance going forward?
I like the way you do it, and the way you explain it. It's easy for me to follow. I appreciate it.
when I get the hang of it, you'll change it.
I'm trying not to do that. I'm trying to seek input and kind of get it so it's more digestible for council, because I know that staring at numbers a lot for some people is not ideal. There aren't crazy people out there like me who enjoy that stuff, but I'm trying to make it more presentable, more digestible, and if there are different ways that council can understand these, it can go out to the public and they can also translate this stuff to them. I'm all for that. So if there are any other questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew.
And item 2, Neil's coming up for it.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This presentation seeks the Mayor and Council's input and direction to HR topics such as staff compensation and benefits for fiscal year 26. City management and HR aim to present these topics annually in a consistent format. Our goal is to ensure the City of Safford's working environment remains in line with industry standards for its employees. Today's presentation will address the ongoing implementation of the HR compensation plan, the increased costs to the city's health insurance plan, and a wage change request for the water and wastewater departments due to turnover and vacancies. As far as our agenda, we will cover annual merit increases, cost of living adjustments, STEP programs, special events pay, Christmas bonuses, and the employer paid subsidy proposal. Our first agenda item is annual merit increases. As a reminder, in the approved compensation plan, the policy for annual merit increases reads as follows. At the closeout of the city's annual evaluation cycle, January through December, all regular full-time and part-time employees may receive an annual merit increase and/or merit lump sum check, depending on their evaluation score as approved in the budget for that fiscal year. Merit increases and/or merit checks are subject to council approval through the annual budget process. Scores tied to percentage increases are reflected on this table. So if an employee meets expectations on their evaluation, they get a 1% increase, exceeds expectations, 1.5% increase, and exceptional performance, 2% increase. Also, as a reminder, employees that are in STEP programs, such as the Sworn Police Officer and Journeyman Lineman Apprenticeship STEP programs, do not receive performance-based merit increases until they enter the citywide Merit COLA system and are no longer in a STEP program. Also, employees in a probationary period do not receive annual performance-based merits. There were a total of 94 performance evaluations completed, resulting in 84 possible merit increases. As far as the scores, 10 fell in the exceptional category, resulting in a 2% increase. 38 fell in the exceeds category, resulting in a 1.5% increase. 35 fell in the meets category, resulting in a 1% increase. And 2 fell in the needs improvement category, resulting in no increase. Please note, 15 of these increases will be in the form of a lump sum check because of the employee being red circled and at the max of their pay range. The total cost to process 2025 annual performance-based merit increases is $84,500 annually across all funds. Staff is recommending to approve the merit increase cost to follow the current approved compensation plan and promote performance-based pay. Can I answer any questions about annual merit increases?
I think you said it affects 94 and that the resulting in 84, when I add it up, I get 83. Do we lose one?
We did. We did, excuse me. We did have one layoff. So that did change the score. I could have updated the slide, I guess. Sorry about that.
Okay, I just thought I was reading it wrong. It's not gonna affect anything else.
No.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, our next item for discussion is cost of living adjustments. As a reminder, in the approved compensation plan, the policy for COLAs reads as follows. All regular full-time and part-time employees may receive a COLA increase to their base rate as approved in the budget for that fiscal year. Employees that reach the max of their pay range will be red circled and provided a COLA lump sum check instead of a COLA increase to their base wage. All COLA increases are discretionary upon the city's financial ability to pay based on budget appropriations. Guidance from the Social Security Administration and the Consumer Price Index will be used to determine the percentage of the COLA increase. As of January of this year, the cost of living is coming in at 2.5%. Every year, we're going to present just the baseline cost of living adjustment as our recommendation, but you guys are more than welcome to discuss that and change that as you see fit. Staff is recommending to process the 2.5% cost of living adjustment in addition to the annual merit increases for all full-time and part-time staff. The total cost of living adjustment increase for all funds is $292,500. Staff is recommending to approve the COLA increase to follow the approved compensation plan and to keep current with inflationary increases. And once again, employees that are in the STEP program are not eligible for the COLA increase. Can I answer any questions about the COLA adjustment?
That 292K, that's with everything in it?
Yes,
Like-
it is.
Okay, like,
Like EREs? Is that what you're referring to?
yeah, like whatever added stuff we have to pay for employees.
Yes, so
benefits.
employee-related expenses, yes, it does include that. Next, we have our STEP programs. As a reminder, the resolution passed for the STEP programs built into the compensation plan reads as follows. The City Council shall, as part of their approval of the city's overall compensation plan, take affirmative action to approve the following subcomponents to the compensation plan annually. The Sworn Police Officer STEP program. For the first 10 years of a sworn police officer's career, the employee will be placed in a STEP program. The STEP program entails a 6% increase every 2 years, expediting the employee through the pay range up until they reach 10 years of service. And the Apprentice Lineman STEP program. For the first 4 years of an apprentice lineman's career, the employee will be placed in a STEP program. The STEP program entails an increase equal to the difference between the base wage of the journey level lineman and the base wage of the apprentice lineman divided by 4. Any thoughts on the STEP programs? Okay, next we have special events pay. Almost always, special events pay is paid out at time and a half because the events are held on the weekends and employees are working overtime to cover the event. However, on occasion, if an employee has taken sick and vacation hours during the week of the event, they are not working enough hours to get overtime for that event. Therefore, managers are having difficulty, staffing the events with these employees, and the request is that all hours worked at special events be paid at time and a half, despite having used sick and vacation hours during the week to avoid this problem. The recommended policy reads as follows. Special events pay refers to additional compensation provided to the employees for working during special events, hosted on city property or hosted by the city. The city recognizes the additional time and effort it takes city employees to make local special events a success and that these events take place outside of regular working hours. Therefore, employees will receive 1.5 times their regular hourly rate for working special events for all hours worked at the event. Department heads are responsible for fairly scheduling their employees to work special events.
We still have a program where they can go work for something else. I mean, I thought they could do certain hours, volunteer work or something.
Yes, so we still have a volunteer hours program and policy, but that is separate from special events itself. Special events, if they're working a special event, it's considered just regular hours worked in addition to their 40 hours worked. So the volunteer time off program is separate from this program.
They can't use it on this program.
No,
How's
they
that
cannot.
program going? Is it being utilized?
It is. Yes, I get regular requests for the use of VTO, yeah.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I really like this policy. I think it really is needed. The employees that do work the special events, they have to take time away from their families, and they're, not able to really enjoy the event as much. So I really like this policy.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it'll help streamline scheduling, and it is a lot of work for our employees, for sure.
And the Public Works Director browbeated us.
Next, we have Christmas bonuses. Staff is recommending a gross up net bonus of up to $500 for full-time and part-time staff, city council, and volunteer firefighters. Total estimated cost to the city, including EREs, is approximately $170,000 for all funds. And then this will be discussed in December as well. Any thoughts or direction on the Christmas bonus? Okay, next we have the employer-paid subsidies. There will be a 5.5% required increase to health insurance rates for fiscal year 26 per Raggett. This table reflects the required 5.5% increase for this upcoming year, with an overall cost increase of $267,500 across all funds, and this is keeping the current 90-10 split. Any questions?
This the one you got to respond to within a certain time here soon?
Yes, so we have an agenda item for tonight for an action item for that increase. So the final recommendation as far as ongoing expenses includes the COLA increase, the merit increases, and the 90-10 split with a required 5.5% increase through Raggett for a total cost of $645,000 across all funds. Any thoughts? And then other discussion items or not ongoing expenses include the STEP programs, the recommended special events pay, and the Christmas bonuses, which are not considered ongoing.
I do have a question about the STEP programs. So the STEP programs are not currently in the policy? This is new?
They're written into the compensation plan. They're just, so if an employee is in the STEP programs, they're not eligible for the annual merit increases or the COLAs, because that would result in too many increases inflating their wages. But yeah, they're written into the compensation plan as like subcomponents.
Okay.
Do we still inherit retirement costs from lateral transfers?
Yes, we do.
I thought that was done away with, or we were going to try not to end up absorbing any more in the future.
Unless I'm not understanding the question.
We stay away from it.
Mayor, Vice Mayor Lopez, we've posed the question to PSPRS. We haven't received a response on Plan 3 PSPRS employees, which are police officers, if the unfunded liability transfers with them. We have not got an answer.
Okay, but are we trying to stay away from that?
If we're part of PSPRS, we just have to follow the directions that they give us, but we'll let you know exactly what that is.
I think the chief knows what I mean.
Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I don't think in the hiring we can use that as a basis for either approving or denying an employee based on what tier they're in PSPRS. And also would affect our recruitment. As we all know, it's hard, not just for us throughout the country, to get employees to be, or excuse me, people to be police officers. So adding that added on top of everything else that they're going through at this point would severely be a detriment to hiring practices. But I don't believe and I'm not an attorney for hiring law, but I don't believe you could exclude somebody because they're in a certain tier of PSPRS.
Bill, are you still there?
John, he had to step away for a minute. He should be back in just a few.
Right. Yeah, I believe the attorney addressed this
I'm back,
before, and I
I'm
think
back.
the chief is correct. I think you can't make,
Oh, he's back.
are you back?
Yeah, I had to go to the restroom. Be covered for me.
All right, so we had a question regarding the assumption of liability when we do lateral transfers for the hiring of officers.
Yes,
And I think we discussed this before, and it can't be a criteria for selection. Is that correct?
I agree.
Yeah, so again, as a singular selection, you can't do an exclusion based on the
I
transfer.
know all the barriers that you guys are putting up here, but we can make an attempt not to absorb it somehow, some way.
Right, I'm just saying from a legal perspective that you wouldn't make a decision based on that.
That's
Again,
what
if you have
we-
alternatives, that's fine.
So, and maybe just to kind of ease your mind a little bit, we have been doing recruitment processes for new police officers who don't fall under that. Again, we've had some run into some roadblocks and some troubles hiring. So, if we have a chance at a lateral hire, obviously we would take that. We've been sending people to the police academy. We bring them up, introduce you to them as well, and they fall into that third tier where we're not assuming anybody's liability from previous employers.
I thought your last advertisement for employment, you were preferring a lateral transfer.
We did put out a lateral recruitment flyer, and we did get a lateral recruit. I shouldn't call him a recruit, a lateral hire. But our last probably 4 or 5 have been actual recruits who we've sent to the academy.
I think you guys can attempt to try to keep our costs down.
So the attempt has been made in sending people to the police academy. It has. So when we advertise, we actually start out with recruits, not laterals. So we've been going down that road, but again, we've run into some roadblocks with that. And so to fill positions, we went with a lateral, and we were able to get one this last recruitment.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
And Chief, I'd hope that we'd also want a high-quality, well-staffed police department,
Yes, sir.
even if there's a little extra cost.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We have one.
Right, and I'd like to continue to have one.
Okay, we have one.
So I do have an answer for you as well on tier 3 and tier 1 and 2 is an unfunded liability plan. They're a different structure in how they invest their funds. And then tier 3 is a defined contribution or a hybrid. They don't carry the unfunded liability, so they don't carry that as much. There are legacy tier 3s though. So in a sense, when you get a tier 3, they don't carry that with them from agency to agency. But if you do hire a tier 1 or a tier 2, you still do have to carry their unfunded liability as long as they remain in those tiers.
There's our answer, Chief. Neil. Kind of how I'm leaning.
Thank you, everyone. So that is the end of this first part of the presentation. Is there any other thoughts, comments, direction you'd like to provide?
Just a comment, Daniel, for me, this remains probably the most important thing we've done over the last few years. And we obviously set it up that the COLA and the merit will be decided annually. But for me, as long as, and I don't think there's any objections, I'm just putting this out, as long as we're 100% fund balances, this should be a pretty easy decision.
Yes, I agree. So I think it's really important for us to keep up on these costs and doing them regularly so that we don't get stuck where we, haven't done them for several years and then the cost is really super high. So
Right.
It
Thank you.
has had a noticeable effect, like the engineer position, we went for over a year, didn't hire anybody that was qualified, so we trained them, after hire. This time we went out for an engineer and we had one in 2 weeks. So we're getting quality employees that are doing good work, yes, and that engineer is with us this evening. So it is having a positive effect, and everything that we do as a city happens as a result of what the employees do. And so it is having a positive effect.
I do have another question on special events pay. About on average, how many employees are working special events?
I'm not sure on number of employees, but I can tell you that we spend about $100,000 on wages between all of the different departments that work special events. But as far as this special events request, as far as the policy, I don't think it's going to add any costs because, or it's going to add very little cost because, like I said before, it just affects those employees that have used sick and vacation hours for that week before the event.
Well, I just want to throw it out there. I'm almost not opposed to even making it double time and making it worth their while to work those events. And I just wanted to throw that out there for council to consider.
Probably not a bad idea. What does, I know that there's some volunteer groups working special events and how, I don't know how their organization is donated to or how that plays into this, but is that why we're using volunteer organizations? Because we can't get enough employees?
I think it depends on the event and the situation and the different volunteers that have been sought for the event. But a lot of the work that our employees are putting into those special events, a lot of times it has to be done either way. So it's just like basic, like patrol, the officers patrolling the event or streets, the streets need closed, that kind of thing. So I feel like for the most part, it doesn't necessarily matter how many volunteers that there are. We're still going to need to work those events because of the services that we provide.
And I think a lot of times, and again, Jamie, you probably know better, a lot of times the volunteers are associated with events sponsored by other organizations other than us. I think that's relatively true.
They're doing things like putting the bracelets on and
And, and
that,
set
those,
up and tear down
yeah,
on
those
certain
kind of
events.
things.
But
Yes, Mayor and Council, the salaries that we pay would still be for closing the streets, sweeping the streets, doing police patrol, and those other volunteers are helping those local organizations. So they really are separated with the tasks that they perform.
So that money's not coming out of city funds.
There, we do have, this year we had search and rescue help during city events just for more manpower. So very rarely does that actually come out of city funds. Generally, it's the sponsoring organization.
Thank you.
And I like your suggestion.
so I guess we'll bring back when we bring for action, which won't be tonight, double time for.
Anything else before we move on to the next presentation? Okay, so this presentation is to review the turnover concerns we have had in the water wastewater departments and the recommended solution to help with that turnover. First, we have a quick vacancy overview. So there's 18 total positions approved in the fiscal year 25 budget for lead water resource operators, water resource operator 2s and 1s, 10 of which are filled, leaving us with 8 vacancies in the department that are currently posted. Quick turnover review. Over the last 5 years, we have had 21 voluntary resignations, resulting in an annual voluntary turnover rate in the water wastewater departments of 36%. 14 of the 21 resignations were for other employment. We have a few that have left for Freeport, 1 to Nationwide, 1 to the LDS Church, 2 to the town of Thatcher, and then 7 unknowns. Additionally, we have had 3 employees transfer out of water to other city departments, such as engineering, utilities, and gas. And the internal transfers are not calculated into that voluntary turnover rate. So as a reminder, we already made adjustments for the market value of these positions in 2023. This resulted in adjusting the pay range for the water resource operator 1 by about 7%. And 2s and leads by approximately 5.5%. A few other things that we have done to help with this concern is currently we're offering a $1,500 sign-on bonus, and it's being advertised with a 2-year service commitment. And then we're also advertising a career advancement plan, and it's been formalized and advertised to showcase the growth and pay advancement opportunities that are available in that department. So we've conducted an internal and local external market comparison to see what else can be done. Starting with our local comparison, in comparing ourselves to the Graham County Co-op, they have similar positions to ours. So their utility worker is equivalent to our water resource operator 1, their water tech 1 to our 2, and their water tech 2 to our lead. And in this chart, you can see our range for our positions, our minimum and our max, and then the Graham County Co-op just has like a flat rate per hour, usually once you've hit 1 year of employment with them. So their wages are about 62% higher than the city's wages. In comparing ourselves to Freeport, Freeport doesn't have water resource operators positions, but Freeport entry-level and semi-skilled labor positions can be compared to our water resource operators. For instance, these positions require basic to semi-skilled duties in construction, installation, maintenance, and repair similar to our water positions. Freeport pay ranges for these positions are higher from an experience requirement perspective. For instance, at Freeport, once you have 6 months of experience, the pay range starts between $20 and $22 an hour, whereas our water resource operator ones require 1 year of experience and the pay starts at $18 per hour. It's about a 16% difference between our wages and Freeport. Any questions so far?
They eligible for anything during their 1 year probation period?
As far as increases?
Yes.
There are differential opportunities. I don't know if those land necessarily in the first year. And just depending on when they're hired, it's possible that they get the COLA.
So yeah, they're eligible, not just because they're on probation, they don't get it.
Right.
I think a couple of these probably need to be taken off because I don't think we should be comparing a master mobile crane operator with the water tech 1. They're
Yeah,
way different league.
Yeah, and really it was just to get a snapshot of kind of where their pay ranges fell. It was really hard to do the comparison because like I said, they don't have water resource operators. So really I was just kind of looking at years of experience. But it was a difficult comparison.
Those are flat rates too?
No, those are actual pay ranges. So you've got the range minimum and the range max for all those positions at Freeport, and then the bottom chart for our water positions.
Well, then, what did you mean there was a flat rate at the co-op?
So the co-op doesn't have a pay range. The co-op pays just a flat rate after your 1 year. They don't have a range. Most employers have an actual pay range, but the co-op does not.
But Freeport does.
They do, yes. Next, in conducting an internal comparison, we've compared ourselves to, or the water department to other utility departments. So in comparing the water department to the gas department, qualifications and job duties between the departments and positions are similar to include performing a variety of semi-skilled duties in construction, installation, maintenance, and renewal and repair of the city's utilities. The entry-level gas position is the gas system field worker whose pay range has a minimum hourly rate of $23 per hour. This pay range is 28% higher than the entry-level position that is in the water department. In comparing water to electric, once again, job duties are similar to include semi-skilled duties in construction, installation, maintenance, and repair of city utilities. The entry-level electrical department position is the apprentice line worker whose wage has a minimum hourly pay rate of $24 an hour. And this pay range is 33% higher than the entry-level position in the water department. So after looking at a quick internal and external comparison, a few things to consider are Once again, the voluntary turnover for water resource operators is high, and it's actually even higher than 36% if you consider it internal transfers and involuntary turnover. There have been no water resource operators that have left the city to go to the co-op, but several have left for other employment. A few have left for Freeport, and a few have transferred to other city utility departments. Something else to keep in mind is that there is the 12% ASRS contribution required by the employee, and this likely contributes to the turnover at their current rates as it reduces take-home pay. So the recommendation is to increase our water and wastewater pay ranges to be comparable to other City of Safford utility pay ranges and Freeport pay ranges when you're considering years of experience minimum qualifications. So being that the turnover does not conclude that the co-op is the main reason for employee resignations, and matching their wages would cause some pretty severe wage compression between the water department and other departments at the city, it's not recommended that we match the co-op's wages, which again are about 62% higher than ours.
Are we taking into account like the dangers? Because someone working on electric is taking on a lot more risk, and someone working in the gas department is taking on a lot more risk than someone working in the water department. Are we accounting for that? Because we don't want to deter someone from working in the gas department where if they're going to take on more risk, they can face an explosion or get electrocuted. Well, why would I want to work there? I'll just go work in the water department where I'm not taking on this risk.
Yeah, and that's something definitely to consider. And once again, this is a hard comparison because you are comparing two different types of jobs. But other than comparing them to other utility departments, we weren't necessarily sure how to do this comparison. So, I mean, those other positions definitely have different risks, but also there's so many other things that you could consider workload-wise, number of customers. So yeah, it's a difficult comparison, and we have to decide, you know, what we want to do to stop that turnover in that department. And sometimes you do have to kind of make an exception to your typical compensation plan if you're having turnover problems. So
At what point are we going to stop trying to compare with Freeport? Freeport is a private company. They've got endless money, whereas we're a government. We're never going to be able to. We can't. If we continue to compare to Freeport, Freeport's just going to keep raising. So at what point are we going to have to draw that line of saying we're not Freeport and we cannot compete with them?
well, and so typically we don't compare ourselves to Freeport. This is just an exception. So when I do the market reviews that we do for all city positions, we do those every 3 years. That's coming up next year. We don't compare ourselves to Freeport. We're making an exception in this situation simply because of the turnover issues. So it's not something that we're going to continue to do. It's specific to this problem.
And I know in our meeting, we talked about one of the employees is going to be switching to a data entry person. Is there not someone else that we could utilize versus reviewing data so that we're not compounding this on top of ourselves?
I would like to defer that question either to the city manager or the utility director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Specifically, this recommendation is around trying to correct a long-term issue that we've tried to confront for the last 3 years. We tried different things in that process, and this is our attempt at seeing if we can change what that perception looks like. We do feel like there's risks associated with both gas and electric that you don't necessarily see specifically with water. You still have similar risk in any construction process. They're in road right-of-ways. Water mains explode, flood. I mean, I don't want to say the risks are exactly the same, but there's definitely still risks associated with that. Specifically, to comparing with Freeport, really it was just trying to get a local market flavor, so we can understand specifically these individuals are are leaving to go to these other jobs specifically for more money. And Danielle pointed out specifically, the additional 12.4 that we're requiring out of their paycheck. Their take-home pay when they start is almost less than the fry cook at McDonald's. And so it's really hard to say, hey, come spend the day in the sun with me in the mud and nights and weekends, or you can sit in the air conditioning and drop some French fries in the oil. So we're trying to find that balance to see where we can do moving forward to improve that possibility. I know I didn't answer your question specifically. If you'd restate it, I'll try and focus specifically on it.
I know they were talking about, in our meeting where we did our budget meeting, they were talking about moving, there's an employee that they want to reclassify from in the water department to looking over, it was data review or something?
Yeah, it's a data analyst.
So this year in our proposed budget, we're requesting a position for a data analyst and a technician to improve our systems within the water, within all of our utility systems, to bring our systems more digital, to the digital world where we have visibility and the ability to manage that system electronically instead of being out in the field. We're pulling a position out of the water to take that specifically, but there's an individual that works for us that would like to put in for that position, but we're not pulling that position specifically for that individual.
I just didn't know with us being so short, is that not something where we could utilize maybe customer service until we're not so short-staffed in the water?
So when we put that position will go out on the street and we'll interview for it just like every other position. It won't be just a hand me position to anybody at that point in time. So
And I'm not against giving them the raise, I just want to make sure that we aren't continuously comparing with Freeport, because we're never going to be able to meet or beat them.
And so
It's just
with
not.
these water employees, when we looked at the issue, which has been going on for years, right? There was no real pattern, right? People were leaving simply because they weren't making enough money. And it's an odd situation to find yourself in, number one, because it's a very large system, which requires a lot of certification. So of all the areas in the city where you would be able to promote and go from a 1 to a 2 to a 3 to a lead, we're not seeing that progression. So, part of the issue was, are we giving them a clear idea that there's a career path where even if you come in at a lower level, you have an opportunity to grow, which generally speaking in the city, those kinds of positions are very limited. The other thing that we noticed was that we weren't getting leads, so we weren't having the longevity to get people into the lead positions where a lot of the expertise was. And so as we looked at, the reason we looked at Freeport again was based on years of experience, just to see if we get a sense of what those pay rates were. Then we looked internally at the other utilities, right? And so while to some degree there is more risk in gas, although there's less than you would think, I think, and Raymond always likes to tell me how hard it is to get gas to actually catch fire. The system that they're managing in water is rather large, right? So there seemed to be an unusual gap. Now, some of that can be a byproduct of where you're looking. If you look at most smaller communities, they will have a water system. So you tend to get more data points. You get a little bit more of a good sample in terms of wages. Gas and electric are very rare in small communities. So you tend to get urban wages there as well. So again, we were trying to look internally to say, do we have equitability even inside? So there's a lot of complexities that go with water that aren't necessarily inherent in the risk. There's the size of the system. There's all the training that's required in order to do the work. So we tried to look at everything we could because there really was no one outstanding issue that jumped out at us. So that's why you kind of have this eclectic approach. One thing we know is that we have anywhere between 5 and 7 vacancies, and it's occurred for over 5 or 6 years. So we're trying to come up with, in the short term, we did the signing bonus to try to get people in now. Over the long term, we thought, let's adjust the wages and see if that has an impact, because given the randomness of where people were going, wages was clearly the issue, not where they were particularly going. In terms of the analyst itself was a function of this idea of life cycle maintenance again. When we come to you with a CIP and we say, hey, we're going to fix transformers, or we're going to fix the infrastructure and water pipes and so on, we're trying to understand better what exactly we're dealing with over a longitudinal period. In other words, as time goes on, what is it, if I create a 5-year CIP in water, well, that may be a great 5-year CIP for that 5 years, but over 20 years, am I replacing my system on a regularized basis? No one's really doing the analysis, and of all the areas we have, utilities requires it the most. It's the most capital intensive, it requires the most analysis, but no one's really performing that function. So we figured, well, we might want to look at making someone available to start doing that analysis, and that's why we went with that. Now, the goal was to not add another body, since we've got all these vacancies for so long. At least in the short run, let's take one of those bodies that are vacant, reclass it, and if we start to then have success with recruiting in water, and over time that you realize that there is some level of service or repair or maintenance that's not being met, then at that point you can replace that position down the road. So this gives us the opportunity to add a layer of expertise, which is the analysis we need for O&M and long-term planning at a time when you've got 5 or 6 vacancies. So if down the road that position becomes required again, you've deferred that hire to the point at which you actually need it and are going to fill it. In the meantime, you're filling a need without adding another body, which then doesn't impact the rates as much. I know that's a long-winded answer, but we spent a lot of time looking at all these different avenues of why they're not filling it and what the costs were and trying to do the comparison. So we spent a lot of time and effort kind of putting this whole thing together.
And for me, the internal comparison is all you need to see why it's not as competitive as it should be.
Right. And there's a lot to water. I mean, it's a very labor intensive. It may not have the danger, but there is a lot of water breaks. We have an older system. They get called out a lot. It's a dirty job. And again, when you look at the fact that there's promotional opportunities, you would think those would be the positions that we're going for. So in addition to this idea of looking empirically at how we compensate them, I want to emphasize that when the people come in, I want to make sure they understand there's a career path here that you have an opportunity to promote internally, which a lot of other areas in the city don't have. So part of it kind of falls on us to make sure we're making them aware that it's not just what you get hired in at, it's the opportunity to grow within that department.
Okay, so in going with our recommendation, it would look something like this. So you can see that we increased the pay ranges for our water positions by about $4 each. This gets us more in line with other city utility departments as well as Freeport. And the overall cost for this is about $186,000, including EREs to the $1.8 million salary and benefit budget for the water wastewater department.
And that's just you're considering Freeport ranges. That's what your recommendation is, to go more like Freeport.
More specifically to other city utility departments, but
The
both.
recommendation,
Yeah,
Freeport.
both, yeah. So I'm putting I can pull up the gas and electric again if you'd like. I just couldn't fit it all on here, but yes, we're bringing it up to match Freeport as well as city other, like the gas and electric departments.
Okay, that's kind of what because like Mr. Hemphill said, you have to look internal. I don't know why you didn't compare it to our own gas department. Well, I know you did up in the other slide.
Yeah, so we've got that here on this
This
slide.
is your recommendation.
Yes.
That.
Yes, the final recommendation is to increase the water pay ranges by $4 an hour. This brings us in line with city utility departments, gas and electric, as well as Freeport, because we did lose some employees to Freeport.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Thank you, Danielle, for
Yeah,
doing
I-
all this. Appreciate it.
I think we should do this. I don't think it's gonna bridge the gap. Because if somebody's going for the money and they go to Freeport, they go to 5 days a week, 12 hours a day, that's 70 hours pay. In the same time, they're gonna have 40 hours pay here. Plus their insurance is free compared to, I mean, I don't know exactly, but we can't get there from here. So
And
the dollars per hour is one thing, and we can try it, but if it's Freeport who's getting our people, they're coming home with twice the money our people are. So
I
Well,
think,
Freeport was one of the employers, but there were several others. Personally, I'm confident in our benefits package. I mean, the city pays 90% of the premiums. We have several holidays off. We have 3-day weekends. So I guess it really just depends on the individuals, what the individual's looking for. But
I agree. I mean, I don't want to go to shift work, and I wouldn't, and I never have.
Mhm.
But the money's out there if you want it. I mean, you can definitely get 80 hours pay every week instead of 40.
yeah, and so I think in increasing these pay ranges, it'll certainly give us an edge, and hopefully we can fill those vacancies. So.
Like it was said, we haven't had a full staff in years.
Right.
We do lose them. We've let a couple go. I'm glad of that, but we haven't been. And water's very important. We have lots of miles of pipe that needs to get changed out in this valley. We're behind on that. We need to catch back up. We need to be able to have crews that can go away and work on certain jobs while they're still maintaining what we got going. We need the personnel.
and I think we're getting too caught up in the Freeport thing.
Yeah.
We've got a fully, all right, maybe not fully, but we've had better luck in gas and electric with similar pay ranges, and we're not losing those employees to Freeport apparently, and we're not. Yeah, we're just focusing too much on Freeport.
We need them. We got the work for them. The work's out there for them to do. We need to do something.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I just had a couple of comments of the challenges that we've seen, and a lot of it is internal with comparing to other utilities. And one of the biggest gap that we had was that there was a lead employee that had about 5 years experience. He's willing to run large jobs. He almost swapped over to the gas department for their entry-level position because of being able to make more money. So that was a large discrepancy. And we also lose several employees to other internal departments, such as the utility locate position, where you're going out marking lines. We've lost 2 employees to that position. And when you talk about the on-the-job hazard, where gas and electric do have more of a pronounced hazard with the potential of explosion or the electrocution, water and sewer are typically your deepest utility, where there's a lot of trench hazard and the cave-ins that actually take a lot of lives throughout the year. You'll see that. So we really need to be safe when we enter deep trenches and utilize our safety precautions. So there definitely is hazards on all realms of that. But the point that I wanted to put across was just the internal comparison is where it becomes difficult to keep our trained employees who receive CDLs. They can jump over to another department and make more money. Appreciate it. Thank you.
That is all I have. Is there any other thoughts or questions?
No, I'm not opposed to your recommendation.
Thank you.
So with that said, I think we're going to bring that back. Is there enough support for, again, it may be an imperfect solution, but like I said, we came at this from so many different ways that we tried to create something as equitable as possible. So we'll see what happens.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll close the work session and reconvene into our regular meeting. Item number 14. Everybody have a chance to review the minutes of February 24th?
Yes, sir. I just did pick up where I had mentioned to Mr. Casellas that we were identifying Yard 2, not the annex building for the fire station, and I didn't see it got in here. He had said at that time that's the way it looked in the past. and are keeping history of what's said, if we're gonna go back to it, it needs to be in there. What was said on stuff like that. And I think later on in the picture, even the picture has the wrong marking, so I just would have liked that to been in there for the history of it. That's all, Mayor.
Mayor, Vice Mayor. In response to Vice Mayor, I did do some research to try to find the statement that you made in previous minutes, and I could not find anything that was um, specifically to that statement, so that's why I didn't include it. I just felt like that was more of just a small talk during the meeting, that if I had to reference anything to those minutes for that statement, I didn't have anything that I could find when I did the minutes.
That's what I mean about the importance of the history. It was discussed and it didn't enter then, and I was hoping it would be entered now and go from there.
I
But
just,
Now, it'll be in there now as a result of this conversation.
yeah, I can put it in the
Yeah, it'll
minutes
end up in the
for
minutes.
March 10th.
I
for
d- I
tonight's.
de- I definitely remember someone that used to sit in this seat making that comment also, so I know it was done.
Okay.
That's all, Mayor.
What's an action item?
Mayor moves that we approve the minutes for February 24th, 2025.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the minutes of February 24th, 2025. All in favor? Opposed? We'll move on to item number 2. Fiscal year 2025, 2026 health insurance. That's employee premium cost share.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Staff is seeking City Council approval for the annual health insurance plan cost adjustment and approval of the health insurance premium cost share between employer and employees for fiscal year 26. It is recommended by staff that this year's breakout remain unchanged at 90% employer paid and 10% employee paid. The overall cost increase of the health insurance plan for the city, as determined annually by the Health Insurance Consortium, is 5.5%. As a member of the consortium, this plan increase is required. The City of Stafford is a member of RAGIT, the Rural Arizona Group Health Trust, which is an Arizona public sector multi-employer benefit trust. By grouping together, participants utilize economies of scale to effectively structure, finance, and administer a range of employee benefit offerings while simultaneously spreading risk to minimize costs. Annually, through the trust, overall plan rates are calculated by the consortium. Fiscal year 26, it was determined that there will be a 5.5% increase to the health insurance plan. Once the trust provides the annual cost adjustment for the plan, City Council determines the cost share between the city and the city employees. Staff presented the required insurance premium increase in tonight's work session to include the 90/10 cost share estimate. The overall estimate with the 90/10 cost share option and the base 5.5% plan increase included is $267,500. The recommendation, based on staff analysis and discussion with council, staff recommends inclusion of the 90/10 cost share split in the fiscal year 26 budget. Any questions?
Mayor.
Move to approve the 25-26 health insurance premium cost share.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve fiscal 2025-26 health insurance employee premium cost share. All in favor? Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to item number 3, Carrasco Well plumbing material purchase.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This is a request for Mayor and Council to approve the purchase of the Carrasco Well plumbing material from Ferguson Waterworks in the amount of $129,951.63 for CIP WA 2102, which has an approved budget of $420,000. The City of Safford purchased an arsenic removal system for the Carrasco Well location to allow the city to increase production from the well by removing the contaminant below the maximum contamination level without having to blend with the Carrasco well field. This purchase would be for the materials to construct both external and internal connections from the existing water system to the treatment system.
Staff recommends, or staff has found that Ferguson is the lowest, most responsive bidder. Staff recommends that the mayor and council to approve the purchase of the material for the Crosco well from Ferguson Waterworks in the amount of $129,951.63. Are there any questions?
The labor and the parts are two separate numbers. We're not mixing and matching.
So Mayor and Councilmember McGoy, the labor for this project would be in-house. So we would be installing this internally. So this is just strictly for material.
So that material bill was 400 and something, what we thought it might be.
So that's for the entire project. So we will be coming back with the electrical component when we bid that out. That'll be added into this 420.
Hoping we'd cut a fat hog there, but. Move we approve it?
Second.
We have a motion to approve, a motion and a second to approve the Crosco well plumbing material purchase. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number
Aye.
4.
Mr. Seal, did you get a response on your water tour? Because this would probably be on there to go see or to understand what you're doing here. Did you get a response? Are we still going to have a water tour?
Correct. Mayor and Vice Mayor Lopez, we do have 3 council members that will be attending on Thursday. And I'm pretty excited to be able to show what we provide for the community.
And this will be one of the sites.
We can stop by there, yep, and we can talk about it, see what it's going to take to get to it. We have a couple different sites that we can visit.
Thank you, sir.
Item number 4, U of A well agreement extension.
This is a request for mayor and council to approve the second consecutive 5-year extension between the city of Safford and the Board of Regents, a body corporate for and on behalf of the University of Arizona. The city of Safford and the University of Arizona came into agreement in 2015 to allow for the city of Safford to drill and operate 2 wells and infrastructure located within the property of the U.S. Mount Graham International Observatory Base Camp property. The agreement allows for 4 consecutive 5-year terms, so this would be the second. Staff has found that the agreement is beneficial for the city of Safford water supply as this area is located outside the impact zone, which is limited by the GRIC settlement. This location has experienced both water quality and physical challenge while drawing water into the system. This location is currently inactive as the city has attempted to correct the quality issues by sealing the bottom of the well, changing the pumping levels, but found that there were little to no positive impact on the quality. The staff recommends that the mayor and city council to approve the second consecutive 5-year extension between the city of Safford and the Board of Regents, a body corporate for and on behalf of the University of Arizona. During this time frame, the city will continue to explore corrective answers to make improvements to the well sites to assist with the challenges. Are there any questions?
I think it can be accomplished in 5 years. I mean, what you have to do.
So, Mayor and Council, this location has experienced several challenges. We did attempt in the upper well, so the upper well had high fluoride levels that exceeded the maximum with an amount of a quarter, 3 months of us running it. The lower well, both of them experienced infiltration, sand infiltration that damages our components when we run it. So while we utilize this 5 years, we're going to be looking into the lower well to see if there's any type of ability to mitigate that sand intrusion. We would focus on that well first since the water quality held in there while we utilized it. We were having to drain that tank annually and back out sedimentation, about 2 inches of sedimentation in that tank every year. Eventually, it just started eating up all the components within the well. So we did pull the well, and we took a step back to see, what can we do to try to mitigate all that.
And this is currently not costing us anything to have this agreement.
Correct.
And you just mainly want to keep your options open in that area for the future. If who knows what tomorrow will bring, and we can fix that water somehow or blend it or whatever. We just want to keep our options open on that site.
Right, and when we develop water, we really want to start looking south of town because it does take us outside of that impact zone. So the Gila River Indian Community Agreement, which is the GRIC that we refer to, it limits us to an amount of water we can pull out of the ground, where we essentially, they're saying that we impact the Gila River inflow. So going south of town removes us from that impact zone. So we really want to try to um, remain or have as many available resources outside of that.
Thank you, sir.
I move we approve the U of A well agreement extension.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the U of A well agreement extension. All in favor? Opposed?
Thank you.
And we'll move item number 5, appeal of property abatement. Amy?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request for the Mayor and Council to hear an appeal from the amount of the assessment as contained in the verified statement for the abatement completed on Graham County Parcel 102-22173B, addressed as 425 Central Avenue. In your packet, you have a background of the notice of violation that began in August of 2023. The process was followed in our code, and on January 8th, after the abatement was concluded, the manager of HKB Properties called the neighborhood officer. He appealed the decision in writing on January 27th, 2025. So you'll see in the background there's a period of 2 years, almost a year and a half while this property was abated. On October 8th, 2024, the property owner was notified via certified mail that the city would begin the abatement process. A timeline and information for the abatement process was included in the mailing. No response was received and no work was completed on the property. A list of local volunteer agencies was also included in this mailing. On November 19th, 2024, no response was received and no violations were resolved. The contractor listed in the estimate completed the work, and the required notice was sent via certified mail to the owner. You'll notice in the analysis section, removal by city toward the end of the statement, if an appeal is taken, the council shall, at its next regular meeting, hear and determine the appeal and may affirm the amount of the assessment, modify the amount thereof, or determine that no assessment at all shall be made. The decision of the council shall be final and binding on all persons. The property owner was notified of the issues via certified mail beginning in August of 2023. The mailings have all been signed for as received. No contact was made by the owner until the appeal request. You'll notice in your packet the entire case file is there, and staff requests that the mayor and council affirm the amount of assessment. With that, Andrew and I will stand for any questions on the process. We have worked through this with our attorney, Bill Sims, who is available, and the applicant is online as well.
Jamie, I think we need to let the applicant make his presentation as well after yours.
Mr. Bhakta, if you would like to go ahead and present your appeal to the cost. You may need to unmute your microphone. Mr. Sims, he is
Can you hear me
present.
now?
Oh, yes, here. Go ahead, Mr. Bhakta. You may present your appeal.
Okay, so on every year we clean that lot twice a year. When you were going over all the records, I think I heard some dates that does not make sense. The only violation that I see right now is the one on 2024, where the person that we hired to do the cleanup who got sick. and went to hospital. And when he came back, he wasn't well enough to do the cleanup work. But Dell Larson, he's the guy who did that since 2017. He's the guy who's doing that cleanup of that lot twice a year. He sprays it too. So I think one of the comments that I heard was that we violated a couple of times. I just don't get that part.
Is the applicant finished? This is Bill Sims, the city attorney.
Yes.
Sir, you raised some good issues regarding the lack of merit or lack of merit of the underlying complaint. However, those issues needed to be raised when you were first advised of your rights to appeal, and you didn't. Tonight's appeal is related solely to the assessment, which is $3,100. That's the only issue that's subject to appeal, and you can contest that. But we provided the quotes from the contractors. You were advised of the amount, and you were told what had to be done, and you didn't. If you thought you had defenses to the underlying complaint, that appeal needed to occur much earlier than tonight.
Right, but what I'm also contesting on that appeal, that letter that I sent, was the car that was parked on it. I mean, I didn't know. I'm out of. I know it says on it, but you could have done the VIN number check on those cars that was sitting there on the lot. I mean, it's not my car. Somebody parked right there, left it, and it's abandoned. How do I know, right? Why should I take care of somebody else's business and pay for it?
Yes, sir. You could have raised that at the earlier appeal, but had you raised it, we would have commented that the way that the statute works, you're responsible for any property on your location, regardless if you own it. So even if you don't own it, and if you have junk vehicles on your property, you have to clean that. But again, that was something that should have been raised at the earlier appeal and was not.
Well, the only thing I can say is I'm not sure. The only aware that I got was the last letter on when Dell went to clean. That's when he told me there was a guy who were cleaning, and that's what I heard. That was the last I know, and that's when I started searching for all of you guys. Like, what happened? I called the city. I called the church group to see if there was anybody else cleaning, and I was looking at all those things. That was the only thing I remember, and obviously that certified letter probably got me, to my hand, and that's how I started working. But all those previous letters that you probably have sent, I haven't got it.
But I think Jamie pointed out that there have been U.S. Post Office notices and acknowledgement of delivery to your locations. Is that correct, Jamie?
Yes, sir. They were sent certified mail and signed for on several occasions. Every occasion, actually.
Was it sent to California, or can you tell me? Because I have two partners, and one of the partner who is in California, was it sent to there, or was it New Mexico address?
Yes, sir. It was sent to Pathfinder Avenue in Chino, California. And that is the address of the owner of record for this property.
And how many times did you send those to over there?
Let me look.
Because I'm the one who managed that, so I'm just trying to figure this out. At the same time, I called them. This is the last letter I got.
So it was signed for in August of 2023 at that address. Signed for October 18th, 2024 at that address.
2023, that does not make sense because we did the cleaning before that.
And it was also signed for January 6th, 2025 at the same address. So the communication has been ongoing since August of 2023.
Oh, in that respect, I'm sure we cleaned it one time because I do it twice a year. The only one that I know, it's the last one that we did not clean because of Bell Larson's, sickness and all that. But I know for sure we do it twice a year. So I'm kind of hard to believe that you did the appeal. I mean, you did the letter sent to Chino in 2023, and we did not clean that. It's not possible. I know we do it,
Um,
and I pay checks to them. So you
Mayor and
probably did it.
Council, the photos are dated, the dates they were taken. So you'll see that the vehicles, the weeds, and the debris have been a steady presence on this property since 2023. With
This is an appeal to council. Council has the right to ask questions either of the applicant or of Jamie or of me.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
When did the cars arrive? Because they were in my neighborhood in 2023 also.
Yes,
Same cars.
Mr. Bell can answer that question for
Good evening, Mayor and Council. On August 3rd of 2023, these photos were taken, and as you can see, there is cars on that location, and different cars have come and go from that property. If you look at other photos, there's different vehicles at different times.
And I'll agree with the owner that those are not his cars, but they are on his property. And I just happen to go by there an awful lot. I've never seen that property actually cleaned up. I think the weeds have been sprayed, but they were already 4 or 5 feet tall and they never were removed. And that's might have something to do with the difference between, I think he said that Mr. Larson had been spraying them, but I don't think Mr. Larson came back and cleaned up the mess that it left when they died. I don't know how to help him now that it's been charged and somebody, who does he owe this money to? Is it the city or is it a contractor?
Yes, Mayor and Councilor McGoy, the city has paid for this out of the abatement funds that we have in our neighborhood officer budget. And generally, a lien will be filed on the property. So at any time that the property is sold, the city will receive our funds back. So this is the second abatement, third abatement that the city has proceeded with, and liens were filed on the other two properties.
And is there an ongoing interest or an ongoing fee until it gets?
I don't believe so, Mr. Sims. There's no interest.
No, I couldn't, no, there's no interest, but there is the 5% for the cost of the inspection.
Yes.
If you all look in your package of your council packet on page 144 of 223, that was the first appeal. It was at that appeal where these issues concerning the inability of the contractor to perform, the argument that cars had to be owned, could have been registered. But when you look at the code provision, and Jamie, is the code provision in here? Is they in here?
Yes, it is in the city council communication form on page 2 is where the council shall affirm the amount of the assessment, modify the amount or thereof, or determine that no assessment at all shall be made.
And that's tonight. But if you stop there, go back to 030, if you could, 030. Owner to maintain the premises. This is the issue. The owner or person in control shall at all times maintain the premises free of litter. Doesn't say he has to own the litter. it says it has to be free of litter. And that's why the cars were a problem. And again, this could have been raised on the hearing that is referred to in the letter of October 2024, but it was never raised. So the only issue tonight is, did the city adequately notify the applicant of the amount? Were contractors retained? Contractors were retained. The city paid for the fees. And that is what that's the subject of the appeal tonight, whether or not that number is accurate.
Feel for the landowner, but I don't see how we can help him. He should have helped himself when the getting was good.
I agree. Mayor, for me, the difficult part is the certified mail with no response.
Yes, sir, Mayor and Council. We really try to communicate and make sure that they're aware. You'll notice each letter that they're sent, the highlighted code is cited, contact information. You'll notice that there was a list of volunteer organizations provided. We do give information of our cleanup trailer. We really try to assist people and help them throughout the process. And you'll see that Mr. Bell documents very well his work on each case.
Jamie, with each letter that's sent out, we see these pictures and they're dated. Are those also provided to the property owner?
Yes, ma'am.
So there's really no dispute that it was not maintained.
Correct.
Okay.
Anybody else, any comments? It's an action item.
Mayor, I move that we affirm the amount of the assessment as contained in the verified statement for the abatement completed on Graham County parcel 102-22-173B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the appeal of property abatement.
You're not approving the appeal, you're affirming the decision of the town, of the city.
Okay, affirming the decision. All in favor? Carries.
Thank you.
Item number 6, large warehouse purchase from Dana Kemper for water meters and transmitters.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Let me get my computer running here. This request is for Mayor and Council to authorize a large purchase for water meters and transmitters from our warehouse. This is going to be a more readily item that comes up more readily now that the water meters have been in the ground since 2013. They have a 10-year warranty, and it's prorated after that to last to about 15 years. So we haven't got on this project as soon as we would like to, and so we now currently have meters that are failing in the ground, and we are replacing them on an ad hoc basis. This is just to stock our warehouse so that we were able to do that ad hoc replacement until we can actually get into a permanent rotation, which you'll notice in your 2026 budget. We've proposed a more permanent rotation of meters through the next 10 years, at least the next 5. But this just allows our warehouse to stock for what we currently have a backlog. Some of this was on our vendor. When you chose a vendor back in 2013, it could only be sold by one vendor in the whole Southwest. So we don't really get to negotiate on price. We're kind of at the will of the vendor, but a lot of communities use this vendor. So the pricing is pretty competitive with other meter sets we see, but we don't do a lot of procurement when it comes to this. We just take the price from the vendor and order as much as we can. As you can see, we're ordering 384 meters and 486 transmitters that go on those water meters. And that costs $312,000, $312,421.22 to be exact. So with that in mind, I turn it back over to council and look forward to your approval on this item.
I move we approve the warehouse purchase, large warehouse purchase for water meters and transmitters.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the large warehouse purchase. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Then we'll move on to item number 15.
Mayor and Council, Troy Bingham again, the Finance Director. This is a request for Mayor and Council to approve Resolution R25010, a resolution to change fiscal year 25 capital improvement plan for the fire department. As you know, last week we had a presentation from our fire chief, our city manager, and myself about the needs that are on the 5-year CIP for the fire department and operational budgets. One of the items that came up is that we are no longer going to go a piecemeal approach for the building and looking at various things that we think need to be improved. We're asking here to change a current 2025 CIP project, which was for restrooms for $30,000. You can see right here was in the 2025 approved CIP. We were asking that we now change that to a full assessment and master plan of the station starting immediately, so we can figure out what it will take to actually get the station up to standards and available for the next 10 to 15 years, hopefully, as compared to a new station. So this is to get that analysis done on the back end. We believe that it will cost more. You'll notice that this is $60,000. We haven't been in talks with one vendor. The vendor that actually designed the police station for us back in the day is the same vendor that we'd be utilizing here. They do a lot of rural fire departments, Benson being one of the projects that they pointed out. So they have the expertise in the field. Per our procurement rules, we can choose one professional vendor under $60,000 without looking for others. So we feel like they have the expertise. We're getting prices from them that we believe are less than $60,000, but we want to have enough contingency in the budget just in case things happen at the building that we're not able to address quickly enough. We want to have $60,000 in the budget. So that extra $30,000 would actually probably be coming from contingency budget that we plan for in our budget every year. If needed, this project might roll into next fiscal year. So at this point, we don't really know. We just want to get started, find out what it's going to take to fix that building and get it up to standards. And then at that point, we can go on to actual construction if that's the necessary next step. So turn this back over to Mayor and Council for their decision.
Does this get us to does this get us where we know we're not going to start on a new station, or we don't know?
Mayor, Councilman Burgoy, great question. So this is starting from scratch. We're just going to look at the building and assess what's currently wrong with the building, what needs to be fixed, what needs to be improved over the next 10 to 15 years. That's going to have a price assessed to it. At the same time, we're going to come up with a price where if we built a brand new station, what would that cost us? We're going to make that analysis hopefully by summer, if not fall of this year. At that point, we can develop a CIP based on what are we going to do? Are we going to build a new building, or are we going to fix the current building? So until we have all those facts in place, we don't want to make any concrete decision in the CIP right now.
So in this study, we'll come back to this group and they'll go from there.
Correct. All findings will come back to this group, and you guys can make your personal assessment on how valuable that information is.
Do you think we'll learn where the first recommendation to place the fire station was?
I think you already have your minutes from prior council meetings that we can go reference.
I mean, like in 94, I thought there was a recommendation.
Mayor Ortega, Vice Mayor Lopez, I think that the approach that was taken was, that historical information at some point was left behind. And the former manager had done a land swap with a piece of property we had on Highway 70. And the point at which we left off the fire station before it was removed from the CIP was that it would be located where the current library annex was. So I think that's why I presented the information in the way I did.
That's
because
not the one I'm talking about. I thought there was another spot back in 94 that was identified.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We ended up in more recent times having put a lot of time and effort into doing the land swap, and the discussion at that point was locating the fire station where the library annex is today. That's why I gave the CCNF I did, because that's the point at which we left the issue. That's the point at which I picked it up.
Was there another study done like around 94 that identified a different location?
Not
for
that
the
I'm
fire
aware of.
station? Okay.
There might have been, but that's been a while. I think we're on the right track now.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm saying. I mean, the historical aspect of it is important for sure, but the council and the administration at the time had moved forward from 94 to 2019, and he had gone through, right as I took over, the whole process of making that swap with the idea that the fire station would be located there. So again, I'm sure that finding that information would be informative.
I'm
It's
not
just,
still dwelling on that. That ain't the question I asked. I just said, will we find out if there was ever before another spot identified for the fire station? I just thought maybe we had it, or we were gonna find out. if
we
it's-
can always look and see if we can locate
Mayor,
it.
Vice
Oh,
Mayor, so again, I did do my research after the last meeting. I even spoke briefly with Chief Anderson about it. I found notes from the previous clerk, as you stated, that had the seat before. And her notes, I mean, go clear past even when she was a clerk for the 16 years. I have notes going all the way back to 1950, and nowhere in those notes do I see anywhere where what was stated. I mean, if I go to the very end of this document, it literally goes to 1932, July 5th. And so I've done my research. I've looked everywhere. I've searched minutes. I've searched packets. I did not find anything. Hence why I did not put it in the minutes, because I felt like it was irrelevant information, more of a statement, because I don't have anything to back myself that information. But for March 10th minutes for next meeting, I will have it that you're stating that you felt that there was a study done, but I could not find anything.
Nothing's been found that somewhere else was suggested.
Somewhere else might have been suggested. 1994, I wasn't even in kindergarten, so I haven't found anything. I've done my research and I cannot find anything at all. I did find how Mr. Casella stated the location of where the current city library annex is located. I did find that in minutes and packets. So we have a record of that. But as far as the 1994 and 1995 study, I could not find anything. And that was searching our SharePoint, our Clerk Drive, our Laserfish, old articles. I could not find anything.
Yes, ma'am. And so we're talking about the fire station restrooms, the slide before that.
Yeah.
Okay, right in there, we're talking about the fire station restrooms, but that red mark is clean on the other, about 3 or 4 blocks away. So, that's a little bit different or misleading. So I know things can be misled. That's why I'm trying to find out for sure.
So Mayor, Vice Mayor Lopez, I mean, as part of this study, again, we have sufficient funds to cover what we believe will be the assessment of the building. Possibly what you're asking for is for us to look at where we should put a fire station. Is that what you're asking?
No, sir. I'm going to retract it because I was led to believe there had been a study once before on where to locate a fire station, and that had been identified in a different spot. I didn't know if we still had that information.
Do you want that as part of this project?
You guys say it don't exist.
Well, we would create it. We would use our excess funds from this project and do what you're asking.
No, because it's
if council would approve,
it's already going to be more than 60,000.
possibly.
Yeah. So no, I'm satisfied. I just want you to note that picture's not correct. I don't feel that it is. So
Is that where the library annex is?
It looks like it's on Central, just
Yeah, so-
south of the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
and you're talking about the fire station that exists now's restrooms.
Right.
And it's just wrong. It's no big deal, but it's wrong. And
Or
so
a poor picture, you're correct. If we're talking about the fire station, it's in the wrong red box location.
subject is not in the right spot. That's all I'm asking. I didn't mean to get going this far, but
graphics department
mistakes
needs
can
to
be
be
made. I
chastised.
just want to make sure. Thank you, sirs.
So when you're talking about, when they're doing the study of whether to remodel the current or build the new, when they're gonna come back with the price, that's gonna be as if we're building over by the library annex. I know we're not gonna be taking out the library annex. We're talking about that city yard there. Is that where that quote would put us at?
Mayor, Councilmember Bratner. So we had our one-on-one discussions with you guys. I think a lot of the times, the only land we own is the library annex. If we're going to talk about a new facility, the biggest cost might be a land purchase, if it's even possible. We can't buy land from a company that's already successful there. That'd be a huge purchase. So I think if you really want to know where we should put a fire station and you're not happy with the library annex, let's add that in as part of this study. Let's look at the building and actually look at another location and come back and give you a current answer for 2025. If we were going to build a new station, where would it be? But first, let's answer the question, should we take care of the old station? all this can be answered with studies. We're not the experts. We don't know what the rules are. We don't know all the parameters. Someone that has some professional knowledge can come and give you those answers and have you and build some confidence in what are we going to do next? Is it remodel or is it build new? And if it's build new, where it's located is important. Location, location, location is going to be a key. And you can't make something happen where something already exists, right? Unless you're going to eminent domain them. So you have to watch out for that.
Yeah, we want them in the best place we can get where they can safely get to it. It may not be yard 2, maybe somewhere else, but where they can safely get to it is the.
So are you interested in that? That's what I'm asking. Let's change this number and make sure we have a sufficient enough funds to get a third party in here and give an educated answer that's not from your finance director.
Mayor, I'm interested.
I'd really like the answer to the first question before we spend money on trying to get the second question answered.
So let's find out about the fire station remodel, and then from there we can
If the one's
take it.
good and we can find that out cheaply, I don't see any point in tripling the money we spend. If the answer is we could have spent this little bit and known the answer.
You're right.
So that makes sense. That it could be a stage process. I can come back to you. We can add to it in the CIP. Not all problems need to be solved tonight, just one.
Well, we solved the 1994 problem, I hope.
I don't think we did.
We did not solve it.
Sounds like we could
I
put
think
it to
it's still a
bed.
mystery.
Actually, we didn't
Talk about
solve
next
that
meeting.
problem because I participated in that study and I know it did happen. Where it went, I don't know.
Right. And so maybe we can find it. We'll have to look.
You left me
It's,
hanging.
it's irrelevant, but it did
Right.
happen.
Yeah. But it may be useful in some capacity.
They'll have to look, B.
I think it was discussion.
B, you left me hanging.
Come by the clerk's office.
No,
I'll
it
pull all
was, it was
the
a
old
study
records
by
out.
an outside agency.
Right. No, I
I mean,
I'm-
we paid for a study.
Right.
It did happen.
No, I'm not questioning that, but I think we've put it to bed. I hope we have.
I agree.
And if we had that study, it'd be a very cheap update to
Good.
look at that study again. Nothing is set in stone. Everything changes every day, right? So,
Just find out if we can make what we got work.
I'll double check B. Just don't worry about it.
Triple
They'll make sure.
And if we recall, when we left it off, we really were up in the air. We're talking about building and everything. This will at least get us both it'll give you options and plus all the other items that we brought in terms of capital vehicles. So now you have a full overview of the fire department and its needs, and you'll have two options going forward. Do you want to build a new fire station or do you want to renovate the existing one?
Was there any more discussion on resolution R25-010? If not, it's an action item.
Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution R25-010.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, to approve resolution R25-010. The resolution to change the fiscal year 2025 CIP. All in favor? Opposed?
This approves resolution number R25-010, a resolution of the mayor and city council of Safford, City of Safford, Graham County, Arizona, adopting a change of the fiscal year 2025 capital improvement plan for the fire department.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to item 16. Ordinance number 025-002. It's amendment to Title 13, Public Services.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we have a request for the Mayor and City Council for the first read of Ordinance 25002, an ordinance to amend Title 13, Public Services, Chapter 13.20.020, Municipal Water System of the Safford Municipal Code. So this falls under our strategic goals of growth and development. The background is what we've talked about in our last two work sessions. The city has historically managed our municipal water system through city code and ordinance. This process is only enforceable to our customers that live within the city limits. As the city provides services to customers outside of the city limits, the city needs to adopt policies and regulations that create a contractual relationship with all of our customers, included those in other jurisdictions. Proposed changes were presented in these two previous separate work sessions on the 10th and the 24th of February. So tonight, we're asking to have these adopted policies and regulations clarified through these contractual relationships with the city. If we look at in our packet, there's the requested changes by both council and our lawyers and the inputs that they had in those contractual changes through our work sessions. So you can see those in the red lines in the updated documents through those policies and regulations. So tonight I'm recommending this be our first read for ordinance 25-002 with a second reading and approval or disapproval of the schedule for March 24th later this month.
Mayor, move that we approve a first read of ordinance O25-002.
A motion, a second to approve ordinance number 025-002. All in favor? Opposed?
Thank you.
This approves the first reading of ordinance number O25-002, an ordinance of the City of Safford, Graham County, Arizona, amending Title 13, Chapter 13.20.020, Municipal Water System.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 17, announcement of current events. Anybody?
I think Mr. Steele answered that the water tour is on and that he's gonna have it. Is there still, we still having the airport one?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, yes, there's been emails been sent out for the water tour on Thursday and then the airport tour on Friday. If you wish to join one of those and you haven't responded, just let me know so I can let Morgan or Cameron know if you wish to attend either one.
Okay, and I'd just like to suggest that the backstop on, backstop, you haven't heard one of them in a while, have you? Is it Owens Family Park area? Is that the title of it? Owens Family Park? Well, in there, you think you could move the soccer backstop back a little bit so the kids can use the softball backstop to play? Thank you, sir. That's all, Mayor.
Okay, at item 18, request for future agenda items. I would like, just to bring it up, it sounds like it's gonna be done to a certain degree, but I would like for the council to get together to visit all of our assets that we have for the city. It's good for the the airport. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Just maybe schedule, a couple different trips or something. And give it some thought. Okay.
I don't know if it, I guess this is the place to say it, that well on Swift Trail, I've not heard any mention of it for a long time. I don't know how many more things like that we own or have interest in or have worked on and aren't working on or thinking about working on, but I think maybe a report someday, not anytime soon, but it'd be nice to know what else was out there that kind of has sitting on hold or something. And why and what, just where it's at, what's going on with it.
Further back to 1994?
That ain't gonna die, is it?
Okay.
We'll move on to item number 19.
Mayor, move that we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor? Adjourned.